I don't know how many days I bobbed along my barrel, keeping me afloat, and God keep me alive, he was on my side for sure. He sent a ship to pick me up before the sharks got me. Which is probably not quite so extreme with the accents, because they're getting harder to maintain. Seems to have a Kitty Fisher Co vessel, the Kitty's Pride. They seem most interested in me and finding out if I knew anything about what happened to their missing crew. I couldn't talk, but as soon as they understood and gave me pencil and paper, I began writing down as everything I could of what happened in that nightmare land. They treated me like I was a toff. I was taken to Kitty Fisher Hospital for treatment and a convalescence. It was lovely there, clean sheets and hearty food. Nurses were gentle and kind, and some were pretty, but all the time I prayed that I would soon be back with my sweet Sally.
I just could not understand the results we were getting. From the moment we began testing his blood, we were seeing things I never believed possible. We had been looking after this poor chap, who'd been plucked out of the sea apparently for about a week on Miss Fisher's instructions. He made extraordinarily good progress, and all the nurses were jolly pleased with him. It had little to do with his care, because frankly he wasn't sick enough. A doctor with my credentials will only deal with patients who need more intervention. We leave the basic nursing to our very capable young ladies. It was on the eve of that day that I was going to discuss his possible discharge with Miss Fisher that I was approached by his night nurse.
Doctor, I need to ask you to come and look at one of my patients, if you will. It's really rather urgent.
I followed her to the bed of the young Jim. She brought the lamp close to his face.
Open wide, please, Jim.
I peered into his mouth and for a moment was baffled as to what I ought to be looking at.
It's his tongue, sir.
It appears to be rather shortened, but normal nonetheless.
That's my concern, sir.
That he has a short tongue?
That he has any tongue, sir.
And then I remembered what he was admitted. Didn't have any tongue at all.
That's how I'm talking.
After the initial excitement, the early research was slow and laborious. My great-great-grandmother began the quest to find the island. The pirate regained his speech, along with his tongue, and recounted what had befallen them with remarkable clarity. More astonishing even than the regrowth of his tongue were his blood and tissue tests. All results showed that his cell repair and production was hastened and increased, having the effect of extraordinary healing and rejuvenation. It didn't take them long to work out how a company like Pretty Kitty could benefit from whatever was producing this incredible restoration. The key to opening a whole new world of science was somewhere on that island. It took my ancestors years to locate the place, a tiny speck in the middle of the vast ocean, and years more to work out that the entire piece of land was surrounded by a natural repellent force, not unlike magnetic reversal, in that it pushes everything away. It's almost impossible for anything to stumble upon the island by chance. Almost. A lot of time was wasted trying to find a way through the barrier, over it, under it, or breaking into it. Then, quite by chance, a discovery that was made that changed everything. The invisible wall was not a complete circle, rather it was a horseshoe, meaning that there was a small opening in one end through which things could pass. Once that part of the puzzle was solved, it was full steam ahead. My great-grandmother made everything legal by staking her claim on the island and having deeds drawn up to prove ownership. No one contested or even showed interest in it. As you can imagine, that suited my family very well, and the culture of secrecy around Infinity Island began. All the fisherwomen before me, right up to my mother, took the project forward, each in their turn. We forged a safe and convenient route, scouted for the best place to build a base camp, explored and mapped the island, until it became how you see it today. I've contributed very little in the inhabitation of the place. It was handed to me complete. My skills were far more valuable in the mainland. The research and results have been beyond anything we could have dreamed of, and need to be properly protected and insured against. I discovered that I have rather a genius for sniffing out the right person for whatever the job required in no time. I had built a task force whose loyalty and discretion matched their expertise in their given field. I also found that if someone had a reason to be invested in being faithful to me, so much the better. It made life more certain for all of us.
Very posh.
It was.
Imagine us at the KFMF. The news was not good. Emphysema. It had progressed beyond help. We were looking at a very grim future. And a short one, eh? Don't make light of it, Mason. That was the worst time of my life. It all works out, though, didn't it, love? I was admitted to the hospital for a course of treatment. They never really explained what it was. But I had to have blood transfusion injections every day for a month. Then the most miraculous thing happened. I could breathe again. More than that, all his tests showed that his lung tissue was back to normal. It was cured. We were beside ourselves with gratitude. How can you ever pay someone back for something like that? She found a way, though, didn't she, Maura? We certainly have been made to pay. I don't care. I'd do it again, and more to keep you away from pain and disability. She made us an offer after Mason recovered. She explained about the Cat Island and how she needed people she could trust to live and work there. It was top secret because the research was so important. Other companies might try to infiltrate and steal it. Never mention that the authorities, the police, the government might be more than a bit interested in the practices that were going on there. It seemed ideal at first. We were told the island had special properties that would keep us healthy and, well, would prevent Mason's emphysema from returning. It was hard to believe, but it was true. We quickly found ourselves feeling and looking younger than we had done for many years. I took care of cooking and general cleaning of the camp and the designated cat areas. Mason was the handyman. Repairs and general dog's body. Miss Fisher had just recruited a new scientist. A proper bigwig, apparently. And we were to make things nice for his arrival. I did ask what happened to the last team, but we learned fast that questions were not welcomed, so we waited for the arrival of this Professor Pauper. My father was a scientist, you know. All of my childhood memories are of his back as he sat at his desk, analysing. Sadly, I'm starting to believe that maybe the memories my daughter has of me looking at my back, editing videos. It ground him into an early grave. That work mentality. His death only made me more determined, inspired me to do what he could not. It was clearly in my DNA. I excelled at university, became the youngest person in my field to achieve a PhD. I chose animal cloning as my specialization and won a handful of academic awards for my theories, and yet more still for my practical work. It is, of course, a controversial area of science, one of those subjects that butt up against theology, often causing contention. Even the laws became flimsy this close to the ethical boundaries of science, and one often finds oneself in grey areas. I like it, perverse as that may sound. It builds character. A pioneer must keep a clear perspective on his goal, intention, and have nerves of steel to help it through regardless of the obstacles. I hit the dizzy heights of success in the 80s when I won the DP Foundation Award for Scientific Advancement for the results I was getting in the field of animal hormone therapy. Changed the accent halfway through. As always, I was a brouhaha, with the Animal Rights Brigade joining forces with the Bible thumpers and demanding I be hung, drawn and quartered, or some such nonsense. It got quite tricky for a while there, and the law intervened and tied up my research so that I was no longer at liberty to work without having to explain myself to one governing body or another. I lost my enthusiasm. If a man of genius is not permitted to express himself freely, he quickly becomes disillusioned and began to sink into the quicksand of complacency. Whiskey helped. I dread to think where it might have all ended if Kitty Fisher Science Foundation hadn't thrown me a lifeline. It was the most intriguing offer I had ever been made. It was all cloak and daggers at the start, but once I was on board I understood the need for discretion. Again, I found myself skating upon thin ice of morality, and too many inquisitive intruders could prove heavy enough to crack the foundations, sending us all under. I was given a free hand to pursue my own research alongside the work I was doing for the Pretty Kitty Company. They're investigators into the rejuvenating properties of the island and how they may be harnessed and made effective in their cosmetic products was interesting enough, if a little superficial. However, it was the work on the island's inhabitants, the cats, that really intrigued me. I had some understanding through my study of their DNA that these were no ordinary species. Some, of course, were domestic moggies like you may have on your lap at this very moment, but others were entirely different. As the months rolled by and I became more absorbed in my work here, I see now that I began to lose sight of the bigger picture. Miss Fisher was demanding ever more intrusion into the lives of these animals, and I was no longer able to say no. I was in too deep. There was a time, a long while ago now, that an incident regarding one of my research assistants so troubled me that I tried to make a stand. I was made aware that my compliance was the only thing that stood between me and disappearance. There was nowhere to run. The only way off this island was guarded by a henchman. Our first son, Jake, took up so much of our time that I didn't dare hope we would have another child. Grace was a perfect mother, devoting herself to care without complaint. Muscular dystrophy is a demanding condition, and she was as much a nurse as she was a mother. So when during the birth of our second boy, Joe, complications developed that took her from us, I knew I was going to have to give everything I had to fill her shoes. The first thing I did was hand in my notice at DP Shipping Co., where I'd worked since I was a lad. Although I'd been given the opportunity over the years to rise up through the ranks, I always declined promotions. I'm a family man. Spending time with Grace and Jake meant more to me than a bit of power or a few extra quid. We did alright. We had enough. Now, though, I regretted it. Not having the perks those promotions would have brought. Childcare and pension benefits would have helped at the time of need. However, I knew the Lord would provide and would be looked after. And so we were. No sooner had I quit my job than I got a phone call asking if we could meet with Miss Kitty Fisher. I scratched my head over that one. What could the big boss lady possibly want with me? Well, I didn't have to wait long to find out. A few hours later, there's a knock on my door. And there she is, the lady herself. You clearly have your hands full, Bob, so I thought it might be easy all round if the mountain came to Muhammad, so to speak. I was speechless. There she was on her own, no entourage, no security, nothing. I was in the middle of making lunch, so I invited her in. We all sat down together, me and Jake and Miss Fisher, holding baby Joe, eating ackee and saltfish together. Just when you think you've seen it all. She got to the chase, I'll give her that. She said how much she appreciated the loyalty I'd shown to the company over the years, and she can always spot a good one. That perhaps we could be helpful to each other in these difficult times. Well, I don't know what was difficult for her, but me and my boys could do with all the help we could get, so I sat up straight and listened well. She explained about her less public company project on a remote location in the middle of the ocean. Now a position has opened up for an experienced ferryman, someone who understood the value of discretion, someone with integrity. She told me how happy she was to reward those qualities, and proceeded to outline her plan. The humility that has kept you at the level of water patrol, regardless of your exceptional skills and experience, is of great interest to me, Bob. I am prepared to make you what I believe you will find a very attractive offer. It can be easy for you to look out for Jake, whilst also taking care of this little munchkin. She bounced Joe in her arms all the time she was talking. If you agree to my terms, I can ease your burden considerably. I'll ensure that both your children receive the highest quality of care available, including a place in our medical facility for when Jake needs treatment, and a round-the-clock nursery nurse for baby Joe, allowing you to work for a very handsome wage. The hours will be limited so that you can spend much of your time with the boys, but the salary will not be limited in any way whatsoever. Oh, sounds good. We got to shoot a few scientists. The Lord was smiling on our house that day. I had been the island ferryman ever since. Years rolled on, and by the time Joe was 12, which obviously wasn't going to get much more from formal schooling. The lack of oxygen during his birth had made him slow. It could have been so much worse, but thank the Lord his brain damage wasn't debilitating. It just made it hard for him to fit in. He was big for his age, stronger than average. So when he got teased at school, he lashed out. He could be a danger to other kids. Eventually he was deemed best all round if he left school and took up an apprenticeship with me. Again, Miss Fisher stepped up to help, got the right letters read and right calls made to keep the authorities happy. Then we were a team, Bob and Joe the ferryman. Things have changed on the job over the years. We used to only do a run a month to the island, delivering supplies and collecting stuff to be deposited at the other facilities on the mainland. These days we travel up to twice a week sometimes. Duties have changed too, but I don't look too closely at things like that. The job's the job. Be on time. Do what's required. Don't ask questions that aren't absolutely necessary. After the business with the security guard and his wife, the goalpost moved considerably. I tried to keep my boy out of it as much as possible. I made sure I only used a tranquilizing gun, but I had to have Joe's help with containing the ferals, at least until the change was complete and we could release them back onto the island. One time I asked why bother going to all the trouble of taking them out to sea just to return them as cats. The professor told me he didn't want to be implicated. Being out in the open water fudged the responsibility issue. It seems to me there was a lot of fudging going on. Okay, so they never died. I felt bad about it, of course I did. But Jake was alive and well, beyond all reasonable prognosis, and I wasn't going to do anything to put that in jeopardy. I was sorry for Zane. I liked him, but what could I do? So we're going to get Zane now. Oh god, it's going to go through everybody. She would love my life, and I knew as soon as I clapped my eyes on that, I would follow her to the ends of the earth. Funny that, because as it turns out, I saw her dead. I was punching way above my weight. Of course, she was brilliant veterinary research scientist in her final year of uni. I worked in the local gym as a personal trainer and teacher of Krav Maga. At 29, I was 5 years older, but somehow it just worked. Neither of us had anyone else in the world, both orphaned young. So we became each other's family, and soon we didn't need anybody else. Our wedding was the happiest day of my life, and we set off for the island straight after, for what we'd taken to calling our never-ending honeymoon. The timing was so perfect, we thought it was meant to be. The gods of love were smiling down upon us. Well, I thought that. She thought I was an idiot, with a head full of romantic notions. But still, it was a bit of a coincidence that she was approached at uni for the job of a lifetime, on a tropical island cloaked in secrecy, starting the day after our wedding. Even me, the spanner in the works, was taken care of when they said they could use someone to head up island security. What were the odds? So after sailing through the check-in process, we sailed off into the sunset. Once we arrived and reality hit, it wasn't quite everything what I was hoping for. I was the only security guard in the most secure place on the planet, so I sat around a lot waiting for meal times. Also, it was overrun with cats. They were everywhere. Mileage went through the roof. Nico was happy though. She loved the work, and I loved her. So I took my antihistamine baths and puzzle books to keep me occupied and learned to enjoy doing very little. We blessed out for months before the cracks started to appear. Nico was becoming increasingly concerned about aspects of the work that I couldn't hope to understand. I suggested that she sit down with the Professor Popo and have it out, explain her worries and get everything out in the open. She agreed and went to see him in his tent. Later that evening she was back to her normal self, happy that she had been listened to and taken seriously. Professor Popo promised he would look into her concerns personally and take it up with the company directors. He couldn't have been more supportive. 24 hours later, I was recalled to the mainland to help with setting up security on a newly opened facility. Why me? I had no idea, but after all the months of doing nothing, I was quite pleased to be useful again. Nico was happy. It was only for a month, so I set off with Bob the ferryman the next day. Back in those days, you couldn't contact the island, and the ferry only went out every 4 weeks, so I had no communication with my wife until I returned. I couldn't wait to see her and ran from the jetty to our tent. We hugged for the longest time, and while she was holding me tight, she began to explain what had happened. I need you to stay calm, Zane. You mustn't lose it. Promise me you'll do as I ask. My life could depend on it. Slowly, she let me go and set me down. It was too bizarre to believe at first. There had been an accident and she'd been bitten by a cat, setting in motion a change to her DNA that would result eventually in feline transition. I made her spell it out for me. I know I'm not as quick as her. Maybe I wasn't hearing her properly. It was a long night, but by the end of it, there was no misunderstandings. Her and the professor were working to find an antidote. I needed to stay put and do nothing that might put her at risk or prevent from reaching that goal. Days turned to weeks, which began to change. She didn't like me seeing her, so she stayed away more and more until she stopped coming back to our tent altogether. Professor kept me informed, but after a while she stopped telling me. And I stopped asking. New assistants came and went, but I was sworn to secrecy. I lived in hope that one of them, working alongside the brilliant professor, would one day find an answer and create a remedy. How naive was I? By the time I'd figured out what was really going on, it was too late. There'd never been any accident, and there would never be an antidote. That is, until you came along, Larry. I had a feeling that from the start that you were different. And look at us now. We've done what we could. Thank you from all of us. Huh? But we still don't know about these guys. Thank you, Zane. Thank you all for sharing your stories. What stories? Are you alright, Larry? You look like you've seen a ghost car. Didn't you hear them? Hear whom? All staring at me in such a way that I know whatever I just heard was intended for my ears only. I know now that what we are doing is right and that the island itself supports us. Finally, we are all properly united and ready to free this island from the evil that's been corrupting it. I only wish I could have come sooner. So many have been harmed, so many used. Each of you has had better nature. Your love turned as a weapon against you to force you to do things I'm sure hurt you immeasurably. Even you, Professor, your love of work, of science, and used to blind you to the truth of the harm you were causing. I think it's obvious that nobody in this story started out with evil in their hearts. In fact, it seems the opposite is true. How sad, in shifting your moral compass by just 1 degree, you have over time come so very far off course. You've all lost so much, there will never be a way to get that back, but we can turn our losses to lessons and move forward with hope. So listen, all of you, I promise this story will end today. We will work together to stop this evil, here and now, and return this island to its rightful owners. Whew, I hope the story ends today. From my vantage point, I can see Kitty Fisher stepping off the boat. She looks exactly as I pictured her. If the wind was in the right direction, I imagine she would smell divine. She has her 2 beasts from hell with her. Reggie and Ronnie, huge Doberman attack dogs. Zane had told me she hated cats, but I didn't really believe him until now. Those 2 monsters would make short work of anything on this island apart from the elders. We need to keep our wits about us. I can just about hear her and the professor as they pass while I'm hiding. It's a long journey, my dear. You must be exhausted. I'm used to it. The weather is rather warm today. A little cold refreshment would be welcome. Of course. We'll head to the mess tent. I need my darlings fed and watered. You'll see to that. She's talking to Zane, who's walking 2 steps behind them, looking like the perfect bodyguard as he passes. I see he has his fingers crossed behind his back. They'll be well sorted, madam. When they're gone and it's safe to move, I scramble into my next position near the mess tent. I can see the others are all at their posts waiting for a signal. When I'm sure Miss Fisher and the professor are seated comfortably, I gesture to the lads. Kibbles and McMurphy shoot out from their hidey holes and run up as close to the 2 snarling beasts as possible without being in range of their gnashing fangs. All hell has broken loose. Ronnie and Reggie are going wild, snapping, straining at their leashes to get at the 2 brave cats, who are hissing and spitting, along with some choice language that thankfully only I can understand. Within a split second, Zane has jumped up behind the dogs and in one movement unclips the chains from their collars. We all hold our breath as they lurch forward towards the pair who are springing off as fast as their little legs will carry them. At the same time I hear her voice open the receding din. What on earth is going on out here? And then seeing Zane with the leads and no dogs. What did you do, fool? You let them go? Yes, miss. Well, what are you waiting for? Go after them. I'm afraid I'm not going to do that, miss. She turns to the professor. Percival, fire the ignoramus. And he's not going to do that, miss. Have you all gone insane, Percival? He's right, I'm afraid. For goodness sakes, you're both fired. Pack your things this instant. We can do this the easy way or the hard way, miss. She turns on Zane and lashes him across the face. Hard way it is, then. He's caught her arm and in one swift maneuver brought the other hand up and plunged the needle into her neck. What the... He... She stumbles towards Professor Pawpaw. He injected me with something. What was it? Then rounding on Zane. What was that? Calm yourself, Kitty dear. I'm afraid it's too late to put up a fight. The damage has been done. What damage? What are you talking about? Explain yourself. Perhaps I can help with that. Who are you? What's going on here? She's holding her neck and shaking with rage and shock. Please, we need to have a chat, and it may take some time. Jane grabs a chair from the mess tent. I don't want to sit. I need answers. I think you best do as you've been told, young lady. Yes, all this emoting will play havoc with your frown lines. Finally, Kitty Fisher has been silenced. She looks from one cat to the next in disbelief. I think she can hear us. How? It's not possible. I'm afraid it is, my dear. She slumps down onto the seat. My name is Larry. I'm the current research assistant, and I've been infected with the virus that causes feline transition. And as you know, like so many others before me, I would not have been allowed to reach the mainland. Kitty brings her hand back up to her neck with a look of realization. Yes, that's right, Miss Fisher. You are now in the process of transition. The blood in the syringe were willingly donated by our very good friend Ravenpaw. She is half elder, and she has the ability to infect. She was our only success at interbreeding, sadly. Her parents, along with many others, were killed in those experiments, but she survived. Are you seriously telling me that I've been infected? Well, what would your deduction be, given your newly acquired linguistic abilities? But why? To force your hand. There are things we need from you that you would not give without leverage. What things are you trying to blackmail me? Do you understand who you are dealing with, you ridiculous child? I certainly do, Miss Fisher, and I have the utmost respect for the many good things the Fisher Foundation has contributed to the world in so many diverse areas. However, the atrocities you have instigated here on this island are unforgivable. How dare you judge me? You're nothing, nobody, and yet I seem to have your future firmly in my hands. You think you're so clever. Well, let me tell you... No, actually, let me tell you. Here's the situation. We have positioned Nico in a secret location. Nico? Zane steps forward and shows Kitty Fisher his catalogue. This is Nico. She was the first researcher you had to assist Professor Pawpaw with this project. She was a brilliant scientist with a bright future ahead of her, until she discovered too much about the Purrfect Foundation and you ordered her to be forcefully injected with the virus. Do you remember her? Kitty frowns. Of course I don't. How could I? Maybe because she threatened to blow the whistle on the whole operation. A dawning realization spreads across Kitty's face. Her. That busy little bee buzzing around my business. Why should I concern myself with her? She's long gone, catching mice and scratching fleas. Hardly a threat now. Look at their date on a photo, miss. Nico has proof the antidote works. A nasty smile spreads across her face. Oh, good. Kitty draws a gun from her jacket. Then give me the antidote, and I won't blow your tiny brains out. Well, I wouldn't do that if I were you. You see, as Nico reverted, all of the memories came back. She has a world of information and proof of the despicable things you've been doing here. Find her, Percival, and bring her to me this instant. She's not on the island, my dear. Her secret location is on the mainland, where she is now waiting for a call from us, which if she doesn't get by 1800 hours precisely. She will then attend the press conference she set up with the Global News Syndicate, and we can expect visitors here very soon after. Kitty's demeanour changes. What is it that you want? You need to atone for the heinous crimes you've committed here, not only against the cats and humans, but the island itself. So we had Nico visit a reputable law firm to have a contract drawn up, which will be couriered to your legal department as soon as you give the word. In a nutshell, it allows you to continue your research here on the island with the following provisos. 1. You found a veterinary clinic to be set up here dedicated to the well-being of all cats on the island. 2. All of your research which involves cats or animals of any kind ceases immediately. However, you may continue to research the island's properties with due consideration for the effect you have on the environment. 3. All results and findings from here on in must be shared with the World Health Organization for the benefit of medical advancement. You won't have time to read the finer details right now, but you can trust us that there are no hidden traps. We play straight, Miss Fisher. We ask for a modest allowance for anyone who chooses to return to the mainland, and a guarantee of a job for life if they want it. You certainly know how to pick people who have loyalty and integrity. Finally, those qualities will be put to better use, and everyone will be a lot happier. What do you say, Miss Fisher? Kitty lowers the gun. Where do I sign? Where? That's easy. You're not going to put up a fight? The battle is nothing. The war has been fought and won already. Bravo, child. Besides, I know a good offer when I see one. I will be rehumanized. I escape incarceration. I continue with my highly profitable cosmetics research and get to be the good guy, sharing my discoveries with the world. Excellent PR and marketing. I couldn't have asked for more. Can't help smiling. Kitty Fisher has turned out to be every inch the businesswoman I imagined. We decided to hold our meeting on the cliffs that led to rainbow pools. It was Snooty Booty's idea. It smells just heavenly. She's half right. When the breeze is in our direction, it carries a sickly sweet perfume, even this far along. I remember when I first came here with Trixie, it amazed me. I didn't know that this place had been used to add perfumes and dyes to the cosmetics. Everything about the island was so baffling back then. How long ago that seems now. About 4 hours ago. Major, do you want to begin? He loves calling us to order and is great at keeping us on track. It makes him the obvious choice for chairperson. Yes, thank you, Larry. If I can have your attention, Kibbles. The sun is glinting off silver specks in the rocks and has distracted Kibbles. He's hunched with his ears pinned flat to his head, ready to pounce. Stop catching the lucilites. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm making sure there are no hidden microphones.
No one has bugged the Sunbeam's car. Come over here and let us hear the latest intel.
Alright, a debrief. Come on. I'm on it.
As you all know, Larry has had an extraordinary success with the antidote. Friendly little cheer goes up, causing me to blush. Miko has not shown any contraindications in the period since her full transition, so this time at last has arrived for each of us to think very carefully about whether we want to undergo treatment to bring about our rehumanization. At this point in the proceedings, I would like to hand over to Larry. Oh, thanks, Major. So we're finally here. It's a big step, guys. 1 or 2 things need to be said before anything happens. Although I'm very confident in the safety of the serum, I feel we need to exercise some caution with regards to our emotional well-being. Not everyone may wish to give up the life they have made for themselves here as a cat. Each one of you must search your own hearts, but I suggest you all talk with each other for support. Needless to say, I'm available should you wish to go over things with me. Trixie holds up a paw, and I nod to indicate she has the floor. When is this all going to happen? Will it be available to all of the cats on the island? Good question, Trix. Firstly, the answer is yes, all cats will be offered the opportunity to undergo transition. However, we thought it would be best to offer it to you guys first, as you've been instrumental in bringing this about. That way, should you choose to, you can be an extra pair of hands to help when we roll it out to everyone else. It'll be a bit chaotic at first, but what on Cat Island is ever straightforward? Exciting times, Car. Mac's right. Let's enjoy the rest of the adventure. We've earned it. And my other question? 3 days, my friends. We begin in 3 days. There's some general cheering, and it feels like the natural place to end. I thought we were going to see what they look like as humans.